(1,742) members, 13 local chapters, 8 subspecialty societies. The Philippine Academy of Ophthalmology.
I breathe, eat, drink, and dream of the PAO.
When you become to be a leader, the number one thing we have to think of what we can do for the organization, what we can help for the organization.
I think the most significant role of PAO is to be the vanguard of ophthalmic practice in the Philippines, not only in the academic sense, but also on the social and political aspects as well.
It's been 75 years since the establishment of the Philippine Academy of Ophthalmology, a milestone for an organization that began with division but ultimately led to a powerhouse for eye physicians in the country. Let us look back at the what, the when, the where, the who, and the how of our historical beginnings.
We actually have to go back to the first movement of Philippine ophthalmology, which dated back in 1945. Education under the Americans, most of our elders were able to study abroad and they were able to specialize more.
It all began in 1945. Herminiano de Ocampo, an EENT specialist, returned from his fellowship in the United States, but decided to concentrate his practice on ophthalmology. In 5 short years, he would successfully establish the first eye hospital in the Philippines. This eponymous center would be the catalyst for Philippine ophthalmology to break away from otorhinolaryngology. As more and more foreign-trained eye doctors returned to the Philippines, the field began to thrive. Thus came the establishment of eye departments in medical schools as well as training hospitals. But back then, ophthalmology was still under the POOS. Dr. Antonio Fernando, the man who revitalized ENT post-war, stood as its founding president on the 25th of November 1945. But growth was inevitable. By the end of the 1950s, local ophthalmology was coming into its own. Ophthalmologists sought more room for the progress and breakthroughs. The field's own success, plus a stroke of luck, would open the door for ophthalmologists to start their own separate society. In 1960, the Philippines hosted the first Congress of the newly established APAO, Asia Pacific Academy of Ophthalmology. The enthusiasm to establish an eye society was so compelling that the Filipino ophthalmologists formed not one, but 2 eye societies. The Philippine Ophthalmological Society, POS, with Dr. De Ocampo as its first president, and the Ophthalmological Society of the Philippines, OSP, with Dr. Severino Lopez as its first president. Each society firmly believed that it was the one true sole eye society in the country. And so, for 12 years, the two coexisted. The president of the POOS, Dr. Conrado Banzon, backed both Dr. Manuel Hachinova, president of the OSP, and Dr. Liborio Mangubat, president of the POS. The two groups eventually merged, becoming the Philippine Society of Ophthalmology in 1970. The young Dr. Salvador Salceda was elected as its first president. This streamlining led to the transformation of POOS into PAOO, the Philippine Academy of Ophthalmology and Otolaryngology. The PAOO officers quickly developed programs for graduate and postgraduate continuing education. The new mandate under Dr. Gloria Lim was to increase the society's academic output.
The most significant was the scientific program, the educational program. Before, most of us had to go out to learn new things, and this was under the PAOO. That's president of PAO under Gloria Lim. She brought a lot of international speakers, well-known, all the top brass in the America to come here, bring the mountain to the Philippines and teach all the Filipino up-to-date ophthalmology.
The PAO at the time, especially under the leadership of Dr. Gloria Lim, was more active when it came to scientific sessions. So parang support lang yung PSO.
The PAOO and the PSO worked harmoniously and even held annual scientific meetings together. In the early 90s, their camaraderie would be strengthened as they once again found themselves united towards a common goal. The lower house passed the optometry bill of 1992 despite failing to consult science and health groups as well as other major oculist organizations. If made into law, this not only violated the Medical Act of 1959, but also encroached the field of ophthalmology. This could potentially be detrimental to eye care and health. Under the same banner, the PAOO and the PSO lobbied hard against it. And when Fidel V. Ramos stepped into presidency, he quickly vetoed the so-called Midnight Bill.
And at the time, it was Dr. Rosie Noche who was the president of PSO, and Dr. Corazon Estrella, the president of PAOO. At the time, President Fidel Ramos was just elected, and so we had to act fast. To make the long story short, it was vetoed by President Ramos because they realized that it was really wrong. That's supposed to be the work of ophthalmology, not optometrists, especially to treat.
It's the age-old story of finding themselves stronger together. Built on the strong leadership backbone of past presidents, the PAOO and the PSO resolved their differences and teamed to become the Philippine Academy of Ophthalmology on the 1st of December 1995.
But then, we were still very young ophthalmologists. I myself was barely 8 years into practice at that time. So being very young, we dared not challenge the status quo. The opportunity came in 1993. I was a newly elected counselor of the PSO at the time. In one of the joint meetings of the councils of PSO and PAOO, the presiding officer, Dr. Jose Duran, who was the president then of the PSO, read a letter from a distinguished past president of the PAOO, Dr. Gloria Lim. In that letter, she presented the idea of forming just one organization to represent organized ophthalmology in the Philippines. We had one organization, the POOS, in 1945. There were three organizations in 1958, POOS, OSP, or the Ophthalmologic Society of the Philippines, and the POS, or the Philippine Ophthalmology Society, in 1958. Then in 1970, POOS was renamed PAOO, and then the OSP and the POS joined to become the PSO. So there were two organizations. And then in 1995, back to one organization, the PAO. That, in essence, epitomizes that expression, unity in diversity.
Since then, the Philippine Academy of Ophthalmology has remained in the forefront in delivering excellent, compassionate, and ethical eye care that Filipinos deserve.
We should all agree among ourselves that this is what the standard of care should be, and this is what is best for our patients and will reflect on our academy.
As Dr. Deliaco puts it, the wisdom and experience of the respected elders, combined with the resolve and energy of the younger ophthalmologists, enriched the Academy to move forward and strengthen its place in the Filipino healthcare environment. Today, the PAO continues to hold mid-year and annual meetings for the continuing medical education of its members. The Jose Rizal Memorial Lecture, named after an ophthalmologist turned Philippine national hero, was inherited from the days of the POOS. Since 1955, it has honored eye doctors who have contributed to the advancement of the field. LEAP, the Lifelong Educational Access Program of the PAO, regularly conducts lectures to spread learning even to members in provincial areas. The e-focal point is the news bulletin of the PAO, where updates, relevant events, and insights are posted every quarter. "75 years, and the PAO continues to overcome remarkable challenges. On its Diamond Jubilee, COVID-19 pandemic came and brought everything to a halt. COVID-19 has severely impacted our society and presents an unprecedented challenge to the entire healthcare system and economy. Non-essential travel is restricted, which resulted to missed follow-ups and elective surgeries being postponed.
Instead of preventable cataract, they develop into pleomorphic glaucoma, and so all the complications. Diabetic problem become proliferative, and these are the challenge. The more we have to help them.
PAO stability, built through many years of rigorous organizational restructuring, is suddenly agitated by the uncertainty of the future.
For the 75th anniversary celebrations, we were only planning to conduct the leaps online, and little did we know that we would be doing the same thing even for the annual meeting.
The Council and the CCEO and the Ad Hoc COVID Committee have organized webinars to continue updating our members regarding COVID matters and the general ophthalmology information.
We are in a completely different world. The change is just so abrupt. There was no time to adjust. Almost everything has to be done online now. And we had to scrap the mid-year meeting. The challenges that we are facing now are quite different from previous circumstances, and for the COVID problem, we are dealing with unknowns. It's difficult to plan if we do not know what we're dealing with.
But necessity has once again proven to be the driving force towards progress.
Well, one hope is for the PAO to be resilient enough to overcome the challenges that we face. Really, it's just like starting from scratch.
With the COVID shakeup, PAO is looking into long-term investments in regular revenue-generating programs, taking the next leap into becoming completely self-sustaining. Ophthalmology was once part of a whole, but through sheer capability, strength, and yes, proper vision, it flourished enough to break away and form its own distinct identity.
I think the most important role is what the Academy did when the PSO and the PAOO were reorganized. It became unified. So I think that's the most important role of PAO. It was a unifying factor for both organizations. All the quarrels, all the differences of the ophthalmologists at the time, they were actually resolved, and so it became a more unified, and it became a strong organization.
We have a lot of young, talented, and capable members who are willing to step up and continue the goal and dream so that our organization can continue to grow in a trajectory direction.
What started out as a call for division paved the way for a united organization ready to blaze the path for the future of Philippine ophthalmology.